Hi guys, it's Sally again. It's week 2 of our collaboration with Julia McNeill Crafts for the Marie Curie Daffodil Appeal. So all of the info about that is in the description below, as well as a list of supplies for this project. So I decided today that I'm going to do an altered book cover. I found this old woodworking book that belonged to my dad. It was in the attic, and I'm never going to do wood turning, I don't think. So it's got a real shiny cover, so I decided to sand it off a little bit, which I did, but didn't realize the camera wasn't on, so I just pretended right there to do it again for you. But I just used a medium grit sanding pad and just roughed up all the surface and then tacked all that dust off of the book and my work surface there with a microfiber cloth. And I have chosen all these papers that I think I want to put on the cover, and I did a dry lay just on my cutting mat. So that's what all of that was, and I'm just showing you how it's going to fit onto the book. I think I have it laid out the way I want it. So, and this is me with trying to make an effort to keep everything in frame today. So I put little X's where I need the corners of that book to lay so that you guys can see everything. So I'm just going to start with laying down a couple of coats of gesso all over the outside of this book. And just 2 coats, let them dry in between front and back. And it's just because I know I'm going to put a lot of glue and water and stuff on this, so I just wanted to have a good foundation there. You probably could skip it, but I always kind of err on the side of caution. And so then I decided that I'm going to have this. It's paper. It's a little bit heavier than regular tissue, but a little not as heavy as wrapping paper. So I'm just fitting it onto the cover of the book, and I'm going to use the matte medium to glue it down. Just a nice, even, fairly heavy coat. I wanted to make sure everything stuck down real well, and then I just brayered it down to make sure that it had real good adhesion all over. And then I'm just snipping notches out at the top and bottom of the spine. I'll get rid of those little pieces of paper to fit the book, the paper covering on the book a little easier. So just notching those out with my little scissors, and we'll get rid of those. So then I'm just going to turn everything back and make sure that it fits and make any adjustments that I need to make at those notches, because I didn't cut them wide enough. So just making some adjustments there, getting rid of the excess paper. Sorry, I thought I sped this up. It's kind of as boring as watching paint dry, right? Almost there. Hang in there with me. In this, I was really lucky. I didn't realize that the paper wasn't completely square. I must have cut an edge crooked, so that back, but it's okay because I'm going to turn those original fly leaves back, and they're going to cover up those edges. So just want to go around all 4 corners then and miter those corners so that the paper fits nicely, and we'll lay down flat. So that's what I'm doing here. There we go. Now we got it sped up. I'm just going to go around all four corners and miter those, and then I just used the matte medium and glued those excess pieces there to the inside of the book cover. Make sure everything sticks down real good. Give it a dry. Then I can flip it over and do the other side. But I'm going to glue those original. This book looks like he didn't even use it. I mean, it's not, doesn't have a speck of dirt on it or anything. So he was a really good woodworker. Turned bowls and made lots of really cool things out of wood. So I kind of have the feeling this is a pretty basic book. I think maybe somebody gave it to him and he just put it aside because it really looks like it was never used. So I'm just gluing that flyleaf down to the inside of the cover, and that covers those raw edges of the paper and makes it look all nice and neat. Getting all the corners and edges glued down real well. And then I flip it over and do the same thing, miter the corners and then get everything glued down. And the reason I decided to cover this with paper completely first was because paper sticks to paper really good, and I'm basically going to cover the whole thing with scraps of paper and my focal point. But I like the flowers on the paper. I think some of it will poke through, and I think I'm going to leave some of the edges all the way around showing a little bit, just to add a little bit of color. So kind of twofold, just wanted to have it under there. Okay, so I'm bringing all my papers back in that I had laid out, and I'm going to start taking them off of the cutting mat and putting them down over this newly covered book. And you see I'm pulling them from the bottom of the dry lay, and then I will basically do the same thing, only lay them on top of the book instead. Make sure everything fits, and I still like where everything's going to get glued down, making any adjustments that I want to as I go. And I have a real variety here. I have some book papers, I have some jelly plate prints, some pieces that were printed out from some online sources, just on regular inkjet paper. And the focal point is, she is a printout from one of the girls that I drew in my sketchbook, and I just really like her. I think she kind of tells a story all by herself. So I decided to use her as the focal point, and I put the daffodil in her hair. So I'm not sure if I want to color her in any way. I think I'll probably decide that at some point along the way, but first I need to get all these papers glued down as a base to put underneath her. So that's what I'm going to do next. So once more, we move all the papers off, and starting from the bottom and work our way up, I will start gluing all those papers down. Okay, got some of those down, and you'll see me periodically picking her up and positioning her so that I know that the papers that are underneath her are where I want them to be. And when I get down to the last few small pieces like those book pages, I just want to make sure that I put them in the right place. So I take her off and put her on, and take her off and put her on to make sure that everything is in the place where I want it to be. And there she goes again. And I think I like her. And I know the background kind of looks like a hot mess right now, but I'm going to use paint here in just a little bit to help bring all those different papers together more so that they have a more cohesive look. But got to get them all glued down and dry first, so that's the process. And I decide that I want some of that dress pattern paper along the edge there, so I just grabbed a piece of that, and I'm going to tear some off and fit it down the right hand edge there here in a second. I really like using the old pattern pieces. I like the color of them. I like the graphic appeal. They have lines and numbers and different elements on them that just really appeal to me. So I do use them a lot in my mixed media work. So I just tore that edge off, wanted a narrower piece. And you see how I'm leaving that patterned paper that I covered the book with just around the edge. It's just almost like a frame. So she's coming back off again, and we'll do some more gluing. And I start pulling out different bits and pieces of things that I think I might want to add as like final embellishments, but in the end I don't really end up using any of them. I think they're all just a little too bright, and I did add that piece of blue and yellow paper that was a piece from a jelly print. I put that on there just to add a little more yellow to the piece, which that is our thematic color, is yellow and the daffodil, so wanted to get that in there. And then just drying everything off really good. Find my marks, keep me in frame for you guys. Then I'm going to grab some just regular craft paint, and that's not in frame either, but it's Americana Craft Acrylic in antique gold. And I put some of that on my craft mat, and I'm just using my finger now to just go basically at the edges of the papers where they meet each other, and just kind of push everything back a bit and give everything a little more cohesiveness one to the other. And then just taking a baby wipe and kind of wiping some of it back and drying it off. And adding a little bit of that paint to the spine as well, and the spine at the back cover. I will do something else on that back cover another day. So now it's time to put her in her final position and get her glued down so that we can finish this project up. We're coming almost to the end here. I contemplated whether I wanted to put her off center or right in the middle, and kind of moved her around a little bit. And then you'll see that I decided that I didn't want to put the daffodil in her hair after all, and I end up moving that. I'm still trying to decide if I want those embossed butterfly pieces. Those are old German scrap papers. They're from the 40s, and they were discovered in a warehouse in France after World War II. When the war started, a lot of the merchants put their goods in warehouses until after the war, and some of them unfortunately were killed in the war, and their goods remained in those warehouses for years and years and years. And when they were finally opened up, there was a lot of new old stock in those warehouses, and that's where those paper scraps came from. So you see, I moved her daffodil to her neck. I liked it there for some reason. I know it's a little unconventional, and I wish I had had a second one that I could have put on the other side. I think it would have kind of looked like a stand-up collar. I just stuck my finger in that yellow craft paint. It dawned on me that fingerprints in her hair would just kind of symbolize how we can touch people with kindness no matter where we are. Here I am in the US, and hopefully through participating in this collaboration, I will help touch a cancer patient in the UK in some small way. So that's what became the center of the flowers, is my fingerprints. And I just decided she needed a blue eye, so I'm just taking a little cerulean blue fluid acrylic and watered it down on my craft mat, and just taking a small paintbrush, and I'm going to paint her eye blue. And then I think it got cut out, but I also took the Posca pen and went over the whites of her eye and the highlight in her eye with the white Posca paint pen. In just a couple of minutes, you probably notice that her eye looks brighter, but I think that part accidentally got removed. No big deal, right? This was a charcoal sketch that I did in my sketchbook, so I really like the water solubility of charcoal. So when I took her off, and I decided that I wanted a little more texture in that background, so I'm going to use this bubble stamp by Prima and use 2 colors of ink and just go over the entire background with the stamp, and I overlapped it as I went to try to diminish the you get that harsh lines from the edges of the stamp where it's just rectangular. So I'm just putting that on my acrylic ruler there and using the archival inks in Marigold, I think, and again, I'm same as yesterday, the blue that I can't remember the name of it. It will be in, yeah, you can't read that on camera, but anyways, the colors will be in the description box along with the other supplies and materials that I used. I really need to just start jotting things down as I use them, because once I leave the studio, which is downstairs, and I come upstairs to my office to do the editing and the voiceover, then I'm not close to the supplies anymore. So I'll have to rectify that. You see that hard edge, so I'm just kind of overlapping. hoping that that will alleviate some. Then I kind of smear it a little bit before it dries, but it gets better as I go. And I know, you know, her the girl's face is going to cover up a good part of that. So, and the yellow doesn't show up that much on camera, but you can see it live and in person. And just that little bit of stamping, I think, helps bring the background together and add a little more interest. And I took my fine tip white Posca pen, and I decided that I needed a little more of a border, so I'm just going to do a little doodling around the outside edges of this book cover. Just some lines and dots and swirls. Hard to see at first, but as I turn the book and I get more on there, you can notice it better on camera. Just adding some little dots now. I think just kind of frames it off a little more than without it. I like it like that. And now I think it's time to glue her down. I must have been thinking about something. There we go. Just, oh, I probably was getting more matte medium out. So I decided to cover the entire image with matte medium on the front first, and I did it in sections and then dried it off, and then did another section and dried it off, because I think it helped to alleviate any air bubbles underneath her when I went to glue her down to the cover of the book. She just had a little more substance to her, since it was just printer paper that she was on. So I think that really helped. I'm glad I did that. So I'm just going to put matte medium on the back of that and on the cover and get her smoothed out and glued down. All the edges down. And I'll tell you what, I sure had a lot of glue stuck to my fingers at the end of this one. Took quite a bit of work to get that all scrubbed off my fingertips, but it was almost like a second skin. But I'm really happy with the way she turned out. Just still trying to decide where to put that little piece that says "Dream Big." And then, you know, me and my Stabilo pencils I love, so I took a brown one, and I'm just going all the way around the outside of her and the daffodil to just kind of help put a shadow behind it and help bring the focal forward a little more. So I'm just using a paintbrush and water to smear that out rather. And just that little bit really makes a big difference, I think, in the end, to have that shadow behind her, around her. And that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed watching this one, and if you have sketchbooks and you like a particular piece, you can always use it in something else. Just scan it or take a picture of it and print it out. I've printed on watercolor paper. This one was just on plain inkjet copy paper, you know, copier paper. So you can use your art over and over, especially if it's a piece you really like. Thought this one just really was a real good image to use for this particular collaboration. Thinking about cancer patients, I don't think I know anybody that hasn't been touched by cancer in some way. So I would encourage you to read the information about the Marie Curie Daffodil Appeal in the description box, and do what you can. We have to help each other, right? And that's it. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and in the meantime, visit the other artists of this collaboration and go make some art. Bye.